And here we are, we're back. It's all dry, everything's nicely taken care of. So now I'm going to remove the masking. Now I've got a masking eraser here, which is a really weird rubbery sort of thing, but you can equally just use your finger. I prefer it, and generally I will usually do it almost in little circles. Now you'll often find, depending on how careful you were putting your masking on, that you'll often find that you'll get little tiny bits of the colour bleeding through. You can reopen this, and I'm just removing all the masking, and then it's just a case of painting it as you would normally. This gives you the benefit of having some control over your backgrounds. It also means that you can use quite free multicolours in the background without worrying too much about trying to paint round things and preserve your whites. So I've got this. I think that's pretty much, it feels like it's all off. The thing is, if you leave any masking on, when you come to paint, the paint won't take. So, and it's never a good idea to try removing it if the paint is even slightly wet, because it will tear your paper. So we've got our normal snowdrops here. So I am just going to use, I'm going to stick with pretty much the grey, but I've got a little tiny bit of purple in it this time, purely because we've got so much purple in the background. So here I'm just going to come down, drop in, and because these don't meet, I can pretty much drop it in on all of them. I'm cleaning off my brush and just damping it so that I get this little bit of a bleed going on. I don't want there to be any hard lines left in. So you'll need to have your water handy. I'm going to go back in on this one and just drop a little bit more colour down this back edge, so that again we've got this impression of shadow. And I'm going to stick with the right hand side as being the darker side, so there's more light over this side. You can see there's a few little blemishes at the top here. All I'm doing is softening around it. I'm going to quickly do that and just lighten that edge a little bit there, just a tiny bit. So I'm just quickly going to do this on all of the others. You can have them slightly more on the purple scale, lighter. Now this one's different. This one had the skirt in the middle. I always call it the skirt. So I'm using a little bit more of the mauve in here. And I'm just going to let that dry. If I don't, because we need to get some lights and darks in the other one, then it will bleed. And this bit here, this goes down into the end of a petal, the other petal at the back of it. So just going to leave that there for a minute. And then come up here, right up under that rim. Same on this side. Again, this is the darker side. And although this is the darker side, it wouldn't be as dark as that bit in the middle, because the skirt in the middle is being cast into shadow from both these petals. So it wants to be a little bit darker to stand free. I'm just going to soften that away. Damp brush. taken most of the paint out. I'll just shape it round, and you can just about see that this inside petal is a tiny bit darker. I'm going to darken that off some more, starting right up here and down the edges, and then soften it back on itself. Now that one also has some green in, but I shall wait to put that in a minute. Just give that a little touch. And I've got a bud down here. Again, like last time, I'm going to darken just down this join. Have that side slightly darker. A little bit of the shadow up there. And then lighten it off. Right, whilst we're waiting for that to dry a little bit more, I'm going to start on the tops of these. So, as in the earlier ones, I'm going in with the lemon yellow first. And you don't have to worry about it being a constant flow of colour, it really doesn't matter. Just picking out where these things come and go from. Then I'm going in with my sap green. Again, this is quite a thin mix. Darken that out a little bit. And then I'm picking up some of the ultramarine blue and dropping that in. Just want to get a little bit along that bottom edge. We will be coming back up here in a minute. A little bit more there. Tiny little bit on the underside. And that's, I think that's perfectly good enough for now. It's a little bit darker on that top edge there. Again, there's a little bit of shadowing. I'll be fine for that one. Back to the lemon yellow for this one. Just be careful you don't pick up too much colour on your brush. If you've just mixed your paint, it might be a little bit soft, so just tap it off on your tissue before you go in. What you don't want is to end up with a lot of paint free flowing, especially if there's any chance that your petals are still wet. If your petals are still wet and you get very close to them with the lemon yellow, you can afford to have a bit of a bleed into it, but you don't want too much, because then it can just go where it likes, whereas you'll often get a little bit of the colouring towards the top, but not necessarily further down. I'm not being too picky about this, just want to get it in. Sap green. Again, I'll come back and just strengthen it up under there in a minute. So just get some green in here, just a little bit. You could get away with just using a light green and a dark green, not a problem with that. I'm sticking with the ultramarine blue, just keeps it all nicely together. So here's my ultramarine coming in here. Again, I'm sticking to this side, a little bit up under there, just to help with that cast shadow. Oh, a little bit. Let's come off the edge there. And then here we go. Pull a little bit through there. and this one down the bottom. I'm going to treat it like it's more in shadow, so I'm just going in straight away with the sap green, not using the lemon yellow on this one, just the sap green, picking out and finding what's in front, what's behind, and then going in with the ultramarine blue just to put my darks in. And I'll go back and have another look at these in a minute. Before we do that, I'm going to put in some of these leaves in the background. So I'm picking up, this is the lemon yellow. I'm just picking up where it meets and interlinks. So this is a twisted one. Straight in with some sap green. I'm using slightly more paint now than I did on the others, just to get a slightly stronger colour. Want a little bit more down here. And this is where you need to be careful where your different pencil lines might intersect and things. So if you can see your pencil line, you need to go with it. And just a bit more down here, and really it just becomes more of a blur at the bottom than anything, so you don't need to worry too much about it. As long as you can differentiate what's what, it's absolutely fine. Just darken this one down a little bit on that edge. That's it. And we'll keep going. So I'm going to avoid that one because this is still wet. I'm going to move down here. And at this point, it doesn't matter how these colours sort of run together. You can still see that there's individual leaves and plants and things. So don't get too hung up on it. Be a little bit more free-flowing with it. I'm just letting as much of these colours blur together. And some of them I'm going in with the lemon yellow, some of them I'm just starting with the sap green. This will help to give you this variety of colours. And some of them using slightly thicker paint than others. Here you can see this was much, much darker. And it's good to get these different colours working together. Get some of these bigger ones in. Adding a little lemon yellow to the top of that. And then more ultramarine blue to the bottom. Again, just letting it bleed across a little bit. So you get all these varieties of colour turning up in there. Nice and quick. It's very relaxing, so stick with it. And then for some of these, I'm going to leave some of the white in and just pull some other colours through it. I'm still using the ultramarine mainly at the moment. And because we've got all these same colours in the background, it will all gel together quite nicely and it will be nice and comfortable. So I am just going to leave some of these whites here. And then swap to a slightly smaller brush. This is, my detailer brush is the 001. Going to go back up to my flowers at the top, I'm just using a little bit of the ultramarine. It's got green in it, so it's not a true ultramarine. Just putting a little bit more texture in there. Just giving it a few little shapes down, just to give some emphasis to it. Wants a little bit more dark at the back here, so I'm using that. I'm just going to put a little bit more along this one side. And then we want to do a little bit on these flowers, on these petals. So I'm back in, I'm adding under here a little bit more dark, pulling some of that greeny blue that I've just put up there, just pulling it down onto the tops. And I'm just going to put a few little shape lines up through here. I might emphasize that edge a little bit. A few little bits on this one. And they are quite subtle. You don't need to get too heavy with them, but you can make them darker if you want. Thing is, with watercolour you can always go a little bit darker. It's not always so easy to get back to the light areas. So with this one, again, a little bit of the ultramarine just up there, just touching it off. I'm just going to pull that down and use it to create the shapes along this inner edge. This is the skirt, if you like, and then this petal too. Just pull a few little lines down, petal at the back, and then here I'm going in with my sap green, but it's got some of the ultramarine blue in it. It's a bit darker. And it's got these little green edge bits on it down here along the bottom. I have seen them where they've actually got some higher up as well, but I don't know if that's a hybrid or if that's just what we would normally sort of see as a snowdrop. I think it's probably a hybrid. So I'm moving on, going down to our little bud one here. Again, just giving a little bit of a firmer emphasis there, bringing that down. A few little marks here and there, just to make it have a slightly more rounded shape. And then again on this one, I'm just going to strengthen up that underneath edge. You don't have to do this. If yours is, if you're happy with it, then just leave it alone. This one, really what this is doing is just putting an emphasis on what goes where, really. And then I'm going to pick up some of the blue. All I'm using is the ultramarine blue here, but it has got bits of green in it. It's just what I've been using as we've gone along. Again, you don't need to put the veining in. Sometimes it doesn't add anything, and I'd say don't bother, save yourself the effort. But if you want to do it, then you want either a very fine brush, or you want a brush that's got a really good point so that you can get a nice fine line. So we've got that in, and all I'm going to do this time, slightly different to in the past, is I'm going to pick up a little bit of burnt sienna. So this is a nice warm ready brown colour, and I'm just going to add a few little pulls of this in. Again, remember what time of year we're looking at. We're looking early spring. Most of the snowdrops have already gone over here now, and we've literally just coming up for Easter. So yeah, a lot of the snowdrops have already gone over, but when they were out, certainly around here in Shropshire, it was very muddy, pretty yucky underfoot, and there was lots of stuff still poking through in the winter colours. One of the other reasons for this is when we're talking about greens and things, complementary colours play a part. So oranges and reds work really well wherever you've got lots of blues and greens. As we've got a lot of green, and this brown is on the warm side, or on the orangey red scale, then it's a nice colour to add in where you've got lots of greens and blues floating about. So a little tiny bit over here. I'm not even going to bother painting it. I'm just going to drag it over it. Doesn't matter if it comes over the paper. Just a few little pulls down here, and we're going to call that done. I'm quite happy with it, so hopefully you've enjoyed it, and as always, please like or comment, subscribe. Great. I'm just spotted something here that I'm not too comfortable with, so I'm just going to go back, and this side petal here that's actually coming, and it's behind here, and I'm just going to darken it down slightly more, just so that it really stands out. And let's soften that edge away there. There we go. So yeah, happy with that. Enjoy yourselves. Hope you've enjoyed this little go at it. And the next one that we're going to do is we're just going to have a look. Same thing, snowdrops again, but we're doing a background using the cling film rather than the masking. Well, it's still going to be masked out, but then we're using cling film. So I'll get to that next. Anyway, enjoy. Bye bye.